So we've accepted that words are breakable into syllables and that one of those syllables in each word will have a stress, okay? Now I'm going to teach you how to identify where the stress goes. There's 3 rules. The first 2 are complements of each other. So the first one is, if the word you're dealing with, whatever word you're looking at, if it ends in a vowel, a, e, I, o, u, n, or s, which are consonants, n or s, then the natural stress is going to fall on the penultimate syllable. Remember, penultimate means second to last. So, when you get a word like libro, libro means book, libro, libro, you know that the stress could go in one of 2 places, li or bro. But if you're following rule 1 helps you identify that since it ends with an O, the stress is gonna have to go on the second to last syllable, all right? Li, libro, and that's how you get libro. That's how you pronounce it, libro. When I say natural, I mean that it does not need an accent mark written. You don't have to write anything. You write the word libro, L-I-B-R-O, you're done with the word libro. Similarly, any word that ends with an S. So if now I have libros, if I have more than one, it's going to be libros, libros. It's important to know this because sometimes people, they want to show that what they're talking about is more than one book, for example, that they're talking about a plural thing. So they'll put the stress toward the S and they end up mispronouncing the word. Like they'll try to say, no un libro, sino dos libros. And that's incorrect. Dos libros. Okay? It just falls on the li. It stays there. So the example I had written before this was mango. Mango is a mango, fruit. One of them, stress goes on the second to last. Mango. 2 of them, because it's plural, it has an S. Stress stays in the same place, okay? Mango. And then finally, words that end with the letter N, with the consonant N, I should say, the stress is also going to be on the second to last. It's important that you understand that I'm using the phrase second to last, purposefully. I'm not using the word first syllable because you could get a case where you get further and further away. So, for example, let's say I'm using the word brothers, hermanos. Hermanos now has 3 syllables, hermanos. But the rule is still telling me to put it on the second to last, not on the first one, because now the first one is okay? So that's why it's important, penultimate or second to last. That's why I say that, instead of saying first syllable. Okay, so the first rule accounts for all the words in Spanish that end with a vowel, N or S. So what's left over are words that end in any other consonant. So any word that ends in any consonant except N or S, meaning M, L, R, Z, whatever. Those words, the natural stress is going to fall on the last syllable. Okay, not the second to last, the last syllable. So here you get a word like comer. Comer means to eat. This is actually going to be true of infinitive verbs in general, right? If you know infinitive verbs, they all end in AR, ER, IR, the dictionary form of verbs. They're always like this. Estar, comer, tener, vivir. The stress is always going to go on that last syllable because it ends with an R, which is not an N or an S. So basically it falls under the jurisdiction of Rule 2. Bueno. Same thing with a word that ends in L, like papel. Papel ends with an L. Stress has to go on that last syllable, papel. But now I could pose the question to you, what happens if you have more than one paper? You get the word papeles, papeles. You'll notice it's actually pretty cool. Now that I make it plural, I'm adding ES. Once I add ES, it kicks up to Rule 1 because Rule 1 covers words that end in S. And what that tells me is that the stress needs to go here on the second to last. So incidentally, the stress stays in the same syllable, which is pel, but for 2 different reasons, okay? So one paper, the stress is on the last syllable because it ends with an L, papel. Once I add ES, the stress stays there because it's on the second to last, papeles, papeles y papel, okay? And that covers basically most words. Those are complementary rules, okay? Complementary. Together they make a whole. That's what complementary means. This one does this side, this one does this side, and together they make a whole. Bueno? So all words are accounted for in those two rules. What happens is, since these rules were laid over a spoken language that already pre-existed these rules, which are descriptive rules, you get some words that just violate those rules. And so the way that the Spanish language deals with that in writing specifically is to say that if either rule is violated by the word, when you hear a word like magnetico, magnetic, magnetico, you can hear that the stress is where? Magnetico. It's on ne. Magnetico. Again, if you don't understand this, try to pronounce the words incorrectly. Magnetico. It's not like that. Magnetico. That's not the word. Magnetico. That's not the word. Magnetico. Okay? Practice with a word that you're more familiar with in English. I like to use banana. Banana. You know what's in the middle. Banana. As opposed to banana or banana. Okay? So here you have this. And what it's telling you is if either rule is violated, meaning if I give you a word that ends with an S, but all of a sudden the stress isn't on the second to last, or I give you a word that ends with an R and all of a sudden the stress isn't on the last one, you're dealing with a word that's breaking one of these two rules. So if either rule is violated by that word, the stress must be indicated by a written mark. So anytime you see an accent mark in Spanish, what it's doing, I shouldn't say anytime, 99.9% of the time, what it's doing is signifying a break in this rule in terms of pronunciation. So if you get a word like cáncer, cáncer, and again, you would only know how this word is pronounced from having heard it pronounced, right? So this is after the fact. This is something you learn later on. Cáncer should be rule 2 because it ends with the letter R. So if that's the case, it should be pronounced cáncer. Cáncer. But that's not how we're pronouncing it. The word is pronounced cáncer after the English, cancer. And so we need an accent mark because it's an unnatural stress. Okay? Cáncer. Papá. Papá, which means dad. Should be rule 1 because it ends with a vowel. But the pronunciation is on the last, where it should be on the second to last. And there's a good reason for this, simply because it's two different words. If I don't write the accent mark, if I write P-A-P-A and I don't write an accent mark, I've just written the word papa. Papa, which is a potato, or the Pope. Okay? That's a different reason. I'm not going to get into that now. But if I write it like this and my intent is to say dad, then I need to write that accent mark. Because in real life, in speech, I would say papa, papa. So that's why I need to put that there. To match spoken language, papa. So again, that's breaking rule 1. Same thing here. It's breaking rule 1. It ends with an S. The word is ángeles, as in Los Angeles, the city. Should be rule 1 because it ends with an S, which means the stress should be on he. Should be like Angeles, Angeles. But anyone who's ever heard the name Los Angeles knows that it goes on an. So it has to go here, on la antepenúltima, or what's called the third to last in English. So this is the same case with that word I brought up earlier, magnetico. Magnetico ends with an O, so it tells you by rule 1 should be on the second to last. That's where the stress should be. So it should be pronounced magnetico. That is not how the word is pronounced. Magnetico. So that tells you that it has to be, now you have to have a written accent mark placed on the E. Magnetico. The accent marks in Spanish, they only go in, it's just one, and they always go in this direction. I had a student point out to me that it's like the direction of a check mark. I don't know if that's true across the entire globe, but it certainly makes sense in our context. So it goes in the direction of a check mark, all right? Entonces, finally, the last point I wanted to talk about was just diacritical accents, which are accent marks that don't affect pronunciation. They don't affect where stress goes. What they do is help to distinguish in writing two words that are pronounced identically. Okay? So the easiest example here is C and C. C and C. They're pronounced identically. That accent mark doesn't do anything, because remember, what an accent mark does is say, put the stress on this syllable. Okay? And if you only have one syllable, it can only go there. So there's no variation. So now, what it does is it distinguishes the word yes. So C with an accent mark is yes, and C with no accent mark is if. Okay? C and C. Sometimes, and there's a lot of these. There's like que versus que, what versus that. There's de and de, there's te and te, there's a lot. But there's tu and tu. But sometimes they can be polysyllabic, as in the words solo and solo. One is an adverb, one is an adjective. So this one, solo, is like solamente, meaning only. Okay? And this one is solo is an adjective, means alone, by itself. Okay? So there's a difference between saying, okay, so if you said solo vivo, using this one. Oh, no, sorry. If you said vivo solo using this word would mean I live alone. If you used it this way and you said solo vivo, it would mean I only live, as in I do nothing else but live. Okay, so they're just different words. So that's where I'm going to leave that. You have these three rules. They are descriptive rules. They describe essentially where natural stress goes, and they're just awesome rules, okay, because they're complementary, so they cover everything, and they have a fail-safe, which is if it doesn't cover that particular word, you know how to act, how to adjust for that. So you just put the accent mark on, and you're good. So the value of knowing this is simply that it will make your writing more coherent, more clear, and when you're reading, if you learn these rules by heart, then when you're reading, you'll be able to read and put the stress in the correct place, even if you don't know what the words mean. That assumes, of course, you know what sound all the letters make in each situation. Bueno, so I'll leave it at that. Those are the accent rules.